All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are doing the guided reading of Plato's Republic, listening to the LibriVox version read by Bob Neufeld. Check out the playlist in the description if you want the rest of these videos. We're going through, and I'm just giving commentary as is appropriate. We are in the middle of Book 4, somewhere in the middle of 432, if you're following along in the Jowett translation. Just getting to the point where we're trying to get a definition of justice. We'll see if it's successful.
Book 4, Part 2, of the Republic, by Plato. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Bob Neufeld. Here I saw something. "Hullo," I said. "I begin to perceive a track, and I believe that the quarry will not escape." "Good news," he said. "Truly," I said, "we are stupid fellows." "Why so?" "Why, my good sir, at the beginning of our inquiry, ages ago, there was justice tumbling out at our feet, and we never saw her. Nothing could be more ridiculous. Like people who go about looking for what they have in their hands. That was the way with us. We looked not at what we were seeking, but at what was far off in the distance, and therefore, I suppose, we missed her.
I'll just pause right here to give a little bit of a background if you haven't been following thus far, or if you just kind of want a bigger picture. They're looking for a definition of justice, and in doing so, whether this is the convenient way or not, they're building the ideal republic from the ground up to try to figure out where in this republic justice is found. And so they did this, talking about the different sorts of people that would be in there, and the guardians, the rulers, and now they're trying to find justice. And so they go for the four classical virtues: justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom. And just in the last section, they defined what those other three would look like: courage, temperance, and wisdom. And now they're trying to figure out where justice is by basically subtracting the other three. So now, okay, we get this definition of justice, and we're going to figure out what it is.
What do you mean? I mean to say that in reality, for a long time past we have been talking of justice, and have failed to recognize her. I grow impatient at the length of your exordium. Well then, tell me, I said, whether I am right or not. You remember the original principle which we were always laying down at the foundation of the state, that one man should practice one thing only, the thing to which his nature was best adapted. Now, justice is this principle, or a part of it. Yes, we often said that one man should do one thing only. Further, we affirmed that justice was doing one's own business and not being a busybody. We said so again and again, and many others have said the same to us.
Okay, so this first definition of justice involves individuals within the state all doing the thing that they're supposed to do. So they built out this state, and each person within the state has their own role based on basically their quality as an individual. And so we have craftsmen, we have helpers of the rulers, we have the rulers, and justice is everyone doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing.
Yes, we said so. Then to do one's own business in a certain way may be assumed to be justice. Can you tell me whence I derive this inference? I cannot, but I should like to be told. Because I think that this is the only virtue which remains in the state when the other virtues of temperance and courage and wisdom are abstracted, and that this is the ultimate cause and condition of the existence of all of them, and while remaining in them is also their preservative. And we were saying that if the three were discovered by us, justice would be the fourth or remaining one. Well, that follows of necessity. If we are asked to determine which of these four qualities by its presence contributes most to the excellence of the state, whether the agreement of rulers and subjects, or the preservation in the soldiers of the opinion which the law ordains about the true nature of dangers, or wisdom and watchfulness in the rulers, or whether this other which I am mentioning, and which is found in children and women, slave and freeman, artisan, ruler, subject, the quality, I mean, of everyone doing his own work and not being a busybody would claim the palm, the question is not so easily answered. Certainly, he replied, there would be a difficulty in saying which. Then the power of each individual in the state to do his own work appears to compete with the other political virtues, wisdom, temperance, courage. Yes, he said. And the virtue which enters into this competition is justice? Exactly. Let us look at the question from another point of view. Are not the rulers in a state those to whom you would entrust the office of determining suits at law? Certainly. And are suits decided on any other ground but that a man may neither take what is another's, nor be deprived of what is his own? Yes, that is their principle. Which is a just principle?
So here we're going back to the individual and looking at what justice might look like on the individual scale. Here, rulers are governing over lawsuits and basically saying, okay, what by what metric are these lawsuits being um, presided over? And the answer is justice. And what is justice? Basically, everyone having and doing the thing that they're entitled to, that they're supposed to be doing. So, if someone owns a piece of property, the thing that they're supposed to be doing is owning that piece of property, and someone else is not supposed to be stealing it. Something like that.
Yes. Then on this view also, justice will be admitted to be the having and doing what is a man's own and belongs to him. Very true. Think now, and say whether you agree with me or not. Suppose a carpenter to be doing the business of a cobbler, or a cobbler of a carpenter, and suppose them to exchange their implements or their duties, or the same person to be doing the work of both, or whatever be the change. Do you think that any great harm would result to the state? Not much. But when the cobbler or any other man whom nature designed to be a trader, having his heart lifted up by wealth or strength or the number of his followers, or any like advantage, attempts to force his way into the class of warriors, or a warrior into that of legislators and guardians, for which he is unfitted, and either to take the implements or the duties of the other, or when a man is trader, legislator, and warrior all in one, then I think you will agree with me in saying that this interchange and this meddling of one with another is the ruin of the state.
Okay, so he's saying that if a regular tradesman trades their craft with another one, so in this case, a cobbler, I think that's a shoe guy, I'm pretty sure, mixes, says, okay, I don't want to be a cobbler anymore, I want to be a carpenter. If he makes that shift, it's not going to make that big of a difference. However, if the same individual says, I'd rather rule over the entire city, he may not be qualified to do that, and the consequences on the city would be significant.
Most true. Seeing then, I said, that there are three distinct classes, any meddling of one with another, or the change of one into another, is the greatest harm to the state, and may be most justly termed evil-doing. Precisely. And the greatest degree of evil-doing to one's own city would be termed by you injustice? Certainly. This, then, is injustice, and on the other hand, when the trader, the auxiliary, and the guardian each do their own business, that is justice, and will make the city just. I agree with you. We will not, I said, be over-positive as yet. But if, on trial, this conception of justice be verified in the individual as well as in the state, there will be no longer any room for doubt. If it be not verified, we must have a fresh inquiry. First, let us complete the old investigation, which we began, as you remember, under the impression that, if we could previously examine justice on the larger scale, there would be less difficulty in discerning her in the individual. That larger example appeared to be the state, and accordingly we constructed as good a one as we could, knowing well that in the good state justice would be found. Let the discovery which we made be now applied to the individual.
Okay, so they define justice. Now they've been going back and forth between the state and the individual already, but they defined it on the statewide level. The guardians doing what the guardians are supposed to be doing, and everyone else doing what they're supposed to be doing. And now they're going to be testing this on an individual level, seeing what comes of it.
If they agree, we shall be satisfied. Or if there be a difference in the individual, we will come back to the state and have another trial of the theory. The friction of the two, when rubbed together, may possibly strike a light in which justice will shine forth, and the vision which is then revealed we will fix in our souls. That will be in regular course. Let us do as you say. I proceeded to ask, when two things, a greater and less, are called by the same name, are they like or unlike in so far as they are called the same? Like, he replied. The just man, then, if we regard the idea of justice only, will be like the just state? He will. And a state was thought by us to be just when the three classes in the state severally did their own business, and also thought to be temperate and valiant and wise by reason of certain other affections and qualities of these same classes.
Okay, pay attention here. We have three parts of the state, and now we're going to be talking about an individual. Can you guess how many parts the individual will have?
True, he said. And so of the individual. We may assume that he has the same three principles in his own soul which we find in the state, and he may be rightly described in the same terms, because he is affected in the same manner. Certainly, he said. Once more, then, O my friend, we have alighted upon an easy question, whether the soul has these three principles or not. An easy question. Nay, rather, Socrates, the proverb holds that hard is the good. Very true, I said, and I do not think that the method which we are employing is at all adequate to the accurate solution of this question. The true method is another and a longer one. Still, we may arrive at a solution not below the level of the previous enquiry. Oh, may we not be satisfied with that? He said. Under the circumstances, I am quite content. I, too, I replied, shall be extremely well satisfied. Then faint not in pursuing the speculation, he said. Must we not acknowledge, I said, that in each of us there are the same principles and habits which there are in the state, and that from the individual they pass into the state? How else can they come there? Take the quality of passion or spirit. It would be ridiculous to imagine that this quality, when found in states, is not derived from the individuals who are supposed to possess it. For example, the Thracians, the Scythians, and in general the northern nations, and the same may be said of the love of knowledge, which is the special characteristic of our part of the world, or the love of money, which may, with equal truth, be attributed to the Phoenicians and Egyptians.
All right, so we're talking about different qualities of individuals, spirit or passion, love of knowledge, and love of money. These are all things that take place in states as well as individuals.
Exactly so, he said. There is no difficulty in understanding this. None whatever. But the question is not quite so easy when we proceed to ask whether these principles are three or one. Whether, that is to say, we learn with one part of our nature, are angry with another, and with a third part desire the satisfaction of our natural appetites.
Okay, so we've got these three parts of the soul. Here he's saying passion, feeling anger, for instance, thinking, knowledge, and also the bodily appetites. So are these all individual parts of the soul, or are they three sort of instances of the same thing?
Or whether the whole soul comes into play in each sort of action. To determine that is the difficulty. Yes, he said, there lies the difficulty. Then let us now try and determine whether they are the same or different. How can we? He asked. I replied as follows. The same thing clearly cannot act or be acted upon in the same part, or in relation to the same thing at the same time in contrary ways. And therefore, whenever this contradiction occurs in things apparently the same, we know that they are really not the same, but different.
So one thing can't be moved in one way and another way by the same force. So we're going to see examples of this. But for instance, if an individual wants to eat ice cream and at the same time wants to refrain from eating ice cream because he knows it's unhealthy for him, Plato or Socrates here is going to argue that that must be two different parts of the soul, because if it was one, then that one thing couldn't act on someone in two opposing ways.
Good. For example, I said, can the same thing be at rest and in motion at the same time in the same part? Impossible. Still, I said, let us have a more precise statement of terms, lest we should hereafter fall out by the way. Imagine the case of a man who is standing and also moving his hands and his head, and suppose a person to say that one and the same person is in motion and at rest at the same moment. To such a mode of speech we should object, and should rather say that one part of him is in motion while another is at rest. Very true. And suppose the objector, to refine still further, and to draw the nice distinction that not only parts of tops, but whole tops, when they spin round with their pegs fixed on the spot, are at rest and in motion at the same time, and he may say the same of anything which revolves in the same spot, his objection would not be admitted by us, because in such cases things are not at rest and in motion in the same parts of themselves. We should rather say that they have both an axis and a circumference, and that the axis stands still, for there is no deviation from the perpendicular, and that the circumference goes round. But if, while revolving, the axis inclines either to the right or left, forwards or backwards, then in no point of view can they be at rest.
So this is just a long way of saying that something can be moving in one way and not in another. Moving in one sense, still in another sense.
That is the correct mode of describing them, he replied. Then none of these objections will confuse us, or incline us to believe that the same thing at the same time, in the same part, or in relation to the same thing, can act or be acted upon in contrary ways. Certainly not, according to my way of thinking. Yet, I said, that we may not be compelled to examine all such objections, and prove at length that they are untrue, let us assume their absurdity, and go forward on the understanding that hereafter, if this assumption turn out to be untrue, all the consequences which follow shall be withdrawn. Yes, he said, that will be the best way. Well, I said, would you not allow that assent and dissent, desire and aversion, attraction and repulsion, are all of them opposites, whether they are regarded as active or passive? For that makes no difference in the fact of their opposition.
So, yeah, the idea that you're averse to something or repelled by something and also desire it at the same time, those are opposite things. So his argument will be that if you have both of those toward the same object, it must be from two different parts of the soul. I already gave an example earlier. He's going to give some examples coming forward.
Yes, he said, they are opposites. Well, I said, and hunger and thirst, and the desires in general, and again willing and wishing, all these you would refer to the classes already mentioned. You would say, would you not, that the soul of him who desires is seeking after the object of his desire, or that he is drawing to himself the thing which he wishes to possess, or, again, when a person wants anything to be given him, his mind, longing for the realization of his desire, intimates his wish to have it by a nod of assent, as if he had been asked a question. Very true. And what would you say of unwillingness and dislike, and the absence of desire? Should not these be referred to the opposite class of repulsion and rejection? Certainly. Admitting this to be true of desire generally, let us suppose a particular class of desires, and out of these we will select hunger and thirst, as they are termed, which are the most obvious of them. Let us take that class, he said. The object of one is food, and of the other drink? Yes. And here comes the point. Is not thirst the desire which the soul has of drink, and of drink only, not of drink qualified by anything else? For example, warm or cold, or much or little, or, in a word, drink of any particular sort. But if the thirst be accompanied by heat, then the desire is of cold drink, or, if accompanied by cold, then of warm drink. Or, if the thirst be excessive, then the drink which is desired will be excessive, or, if not great, the quantity of drink will also be small. But thirst, pure and simple, will desire drink pure and simple, which is the natural selection of thirst, as food is of hunger.
So this is just a little bit of distinction making here, but basically thirst as thirst is for a drink. And when that happens in certain circumstances, for instance, if you're really hot, you're going to want a cold drink. If you're really cold, you might want a warm drink. If you're very thirsty, you might want a lot of something to drink. The idea here being that the soul, which we're talking about desires at this point, the soul which would desire is desiring drink, period.
Yes, he said, the simple desire is, as you say, in every case of the simple object, and the qualified desire of the qualified object. But here a confusion may arise, and I should wish to guard against an opponent starting up and saying that no man desires drink only, but good drink, or food only, but good food. For good is the universal object of desire, and thirst, being a desire, will necessarily be thirst after good drink, and the same is true of every other desire. Yes, he replied, the opponent might have something to say. Nevertheless, I should still maintain that of relatives some have a quality attached to either term of the relation, others are simple and have their correlatives simple. I do not know what you mean. Well, you know, of course, that the greater is relative to the less, certainly, and the much greater to the much less. Yes, and the sometime greater to the sometime less, and the greater that is to be to the less that is to be. Certainly, he said. And so of more and less, and of other correlative terms, such as the double and the half, or again the heavier and the lighter, the swifter and the slower, and of hot and cold, and of any other relatives. Is not this true of all of them? Yes. And does not the same principle hold in the sciences? The object of science is knowledge, assuming that to be the true definition, but the object of a particular science is a particular kind of knowledge. I mean, for example, that the science of house-building is a kind of knowledge which is defined and distinguished from other kinds, and is therefore termed architecture. Certainly, because it has a particular quality which no other has. Yes, and it has this particular quality because it has an object of a particular kind, and this is true of the other arts and sciences.
All right, just follow along here. I'll try to make some sense of it at the end, but I think he's going to explain himself in this next paragraph.
Yes. Now then, if I made myself clear, you will understand my original meaning in what I said about relatives. My meaning was that if one term of a relation is taken alone, the other is taken alone. If one term is qualified, the other is also qualified. I do not mean to say that relatives may not be disparate, or that the science of health is healthy, or of disease necessarily diseased, or that the sciences of good and evil are therefore good and evil, but only that, when the term science is no longer used absolutely, but has a qualified object which in this case is the nature of health and disease, it becomes defined, and is hence called not merely science, but the science of medicine.
Okay, so this is sort of harkening back to one of the earlier discussions they had about professions. So, like the doctor, is the doctor solely concerned with making people feel better or fixing the body, or are they also concerned with making money? Because doctors also make money. So, if you qualify the doctor as a person who heals an individual and makes money, you've added something to that definition. So the pure doctor purely makes people feel better, but we can sort of addend that definition and add on other things that are related. So this is going to make hopefully sense when we get back to thirst. Um, Again, trying to get back to this idea of whether the soul is one part or three. And spoiler alert, he thinks it's three.
I quite understand, and I think as you do. Would you not say that thirst is one of these essentially relative terms, having clearly a relation? Yes, thirst is relative to drink. And a certain kind of thirst is relative to a certain kind of drink. But thirst taken alone is neither of much nor little, nor of good nor bad, nor of any particular kind of drink, but of drink only. Certain.
So just again, just to put another nail in this, um, thirst simply desires drink simply, and this is going to be important as he goes through the definition of a desire.
Then the soul of the thirsty one, in so far as he is thirsty, desires only drink. For this he yearns and tries to obtain it. Well, that is plain. And if you suppose something which pulls a thirsty soul away from drink, that must be different from the thirsty principle which draws him like a beast to drink. For as we were saying, the same thing cannot at the same time, with the same part of itself, act in contrary ways about the same. Impossible.
Okay, so I think this is probably a good place to cut it because I'm going to do this part four, this second half of part four, in two sections, roughly 20-minute sections in the on the LibriVox recording. So just to recap about this, where he's going is that the thirsty person desires a drink, or rather the thirsty part of the soul. We're going to get to that later, right? So if someone desires to drink, that part of them only desires to drink. So if something can make a thirsty person not drink something, so for instance, they're fasting. Well, I guess that has to do with food. For instance, they're waiting for later to drink something for a different reason. Or, for instance, they look at the drink in front of them and say, I don't want that particular drink, or that drink is not good for me, or that drink is poison. If there's something that's leading them away from the same thing that part of their soul is drawing them to, then there must be multiple parts of the soul, because one part is saying, I want this thing, and another part is saying, I don't want that thing. And that's going to be his argument for the multiple parts of the soul, or as we learn later, the tripartite soul, the three parts of the soul, which are, intellect, appetite, and emotions. So we're going to get there in the next section, but I think this is a great part to cut it off on. And if if you keep following me, we will get to the rest of it very soon. Until then, see you later.